he was very clearly told, "If you ever hear the wailing of a child echoing through the forest, you must resist the temptation to follow it." Today, we're going to share the top 5 most shocking and previously untold park ranger encounters from the year 1980. Encounters that happened all across national parks in the United States. Let's get started. Number 5 on our countdown is the story of the ill-fated park ranger who disregarded the advice of a wise old man.
As a ranger known for my courage and commitment, I always took my duty to safeguard the park and its visitors very seriously. While on patrol, the uncanny sound of a child sobbing echoed through the dense forest. My instincts kicked in, but I remembered what the old man had told me. If you ever hear the wailing of a child echoing through the forest, you must resist the temptation to follow it. Throwing caution to the wind, my resolve to protect overpowered the recluse's haunting warning. On this particular summer night, I was patrolling my usual route around the park. As always, there was an eerie stillness to the forest, a silence only broken by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustling of small creatures in the underbrush. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and as I walked, my flashlight's beam bounced off the thick trunks of towering trees. Out of nowhere, a pitiful sound cut through the silence like a knife. It was a child sobbing, echoing through the dense foliage. My blood ran cold. I remembered the words of the old man who used to live by the park's edge, his warning playing in my head like a broken record. Yet my duty as a ranger urged me to investigate. The sobs seemed to grow louder, bouncing off the trees and turning into a mournful echo. Every instinct told me to follow the sound, to find its source, to help the child that might be in danger. I radioed in my location, let my fellow rangers know about the situation, and started in the direction of the crying. Moving through the underbrush was challenging. The sound seemed to be leading me deeper into the forest, away from any known trails. I stumbled on roots and tripped over hidden stones. But like a siren's call, the crying beckoned me to continue. The forest seemed to close in around me, the shadows playing tricks on my mind. When I found the source of the sound, I froze in shock. There was no child. Instead, I found an old tape recorder set to repeat the sounds of a child crying. My mind raced and my heart pounded against my ribs. A trick? A prank? Or something more sinister? Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound behind me. My hand instinctively went to my sidearm as I swung my flashlight around. A bear? A wolf? The possibilities were endless and none were comforting. However, there was nothing there, just the dense forest staring back at me. I turned back towards the tape recorder, but it was no longer there. My heart hammered in my chest as a cold dread washed over me. I was certain it had been there, but now there was only a bare patch of earth where it had been. The sobbing had stopped. The forest was deathly silent. Disoriented, I tried to find my way back, but all the familiar landmarks seemed to have disappeared. The trees loomed menacingly, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers in the dark. My radio, which should have been my lifeline, was just static. Suddenly, a child's laughter echoed through the stillness. This wasn't on the tape. This was live, high-pitched and eerily merry. It sent shivers down my spine. I turned and saw a little boy standing a few meters away. He was in old-fashioned clothing, his face pale in the moonlight, his eyes wide and hollow. Before I could react, he bolted into the forest. I pursued him, my fear momentarily forgotten. I had to find the child, protect him, and lead him to safety. Yet every time I felt I was gaining on him, he'd just laugh and disappear further into the forest. After what seemed like hours, I stumbled into a clearing. There, under the light of the moon, stood a deserted log cabin. It was old and weathered, its wood darkened with time, its windows vacant. The boy was nowhere to be seen, but there was a faint light flickering inside the cabin. Against my better judgment, I approached it. The door creaked open at my touch, revealing a dusty, decrepit interior. Cobwebs hung like curtains, and the air was musty with age. But there in the corner, on a rickety wooden table, was the tape recorder. I picked it up, my hand shaking. It was cold, impossibly cold. Suddenly, the room was filled with the echoing sound of the boy's laughter. Then, as quickly as it had started, it fell silent. I looked up and found myself staring into the hollow eyes of the little boy. He smiled at me, an innocent, chilling smile, before he faded away into nothing. Then, as suddenly as I had arrived, I was back on the familiar trail. The cabin, the boy, the tape recorder. They were all gone. I was alone in the silence of the forest once again. I reported back to my station, my voice shaking as I recounted the night's events. They didn't believe me, of course. I can't blame them. I could barely believe it myself. They chalked it up to fatigue and a wild imagination. But I knew what I saw, what I heard, what I experienced. After that night, I never heard the sobbing or the laughter again. But sometimes when I walk my patrol route, I feel eyes on me. I see shadows shift out of the corner of my eye. I feel an icy chill on the back of my neck, even on the warmest summer night. I still don't know what happened that night. Was it the spirit of a lost child, a chilling prank, or a manifestation of the old man's warning? All I know is that my job, my duty, led me into an uncanny encounter that I'll never forget. As a ranger, I pledged to protect this park and its visitors, but I've come to realize there are things in these woods that don't want to be found, and some cries for help are best left unanswered.
Coming in at number 4, we bring you the Phantom Fires.
I've been a park ranger for the better part of my career. Nothing about my job fazed me anymore. Well, nothing until the Phantom Fires started happening. We'd get frantic calls about a fire tearing through the forest, but each time we'd reach the scene, the fire would be gone, leaving only the eerie scent of smoke and scorched bark. My first encounter with these Phantom Fires was on a chill autumn evening. I'd been on night patrol, the calmness of the forest interrupted by a distressed call from a camper. He claimed to see bright flames in the distance, the sky painted with ominous orange hues. I remember my heart pounding as I drove my cruiser to the reported location. The instant I stepped out of my vehicle, the heavy smell of smoke hit my nostrils. However, what laid before me was a tranquil scene, not a raging fire. Trees bore blackened marks, as if licked by ferocious flames, but there was no fire. The silence that hung in the air was unnerving, my heart thudding in my chest as I radioed the situation back to base. Over the next few months, the incidents increased. We'd receive reports from hikers, campers, even fellow rangers. Each time the story was the same, an intense fire that vanished before anyone could reach it. The scorched trees and lingering smoke were the only evidence left behind. I grew obsessed, spending my nights patrolling the deepest parts of the forest, waiting for a glimpse of these phantom fires. Days turned into weeks and then months, but I couldn't let go of the phantom fires. They were like a puzzle, a mystery that begged to be solved. I spent every spare minute in the library, poring over local history, folklore, anything that might give me a clue. In an old newspaper clipping, I found a story about a devastating forest fire from a century ago, one that had ravaged the area for days before mysteriously extinguishing itself. It occurred in the same area where the phantom fires were now reported. This couldn't be a coincidence. One night, armed with this knowledge, I went back to the clearing. The air was thick with anticipation. As if on cue, a glow appeared in the distance, growing brighter with each passing moment. This time I wasn't filled with fear, but with a strange sense of determination. I walked towards the light, the heat growing with each step. Just as I was at the edge of the clearing, I saw it. A fire, a raging, dancing fire. But there was something in the flames. A figure. I squinted, trying to make sense of the sight. Suddenly the figure turned towards me, its shape taking form in the flames. A man, an old-timey miner, panicked and screamed silently. He reached out to me before the flames swallowed him, and just as suddenly as it had appeared, the fire was gone. I was left in the dark, the echo of a ghostly scream ringing in my ears. I stumbled back to my cruiser, my mind struggling to process what I had witnessed. Could it be? The miner from a century ago trapped in an eternal fire? My report was met with skepticism. I was asked to take some time off, to rest. But I knew what I'd seen. The phantom fires weren't just an inexplicable phenomenon. They were echoes of a tragedy, a glimpse into the past. After my return, I requested a transfer. I couldn't bear to patrol those parts of the forest anymore. The memories of the fire, the ghostly miner, they were too much. I wondered if he was still there, trapped, forever reliving his final moments. Word got back to me that over time, the incidents of the phantom fires had lessened. Maybe the miner found his peace. Maybe he moved on. Or maybe he's still there, waiting to be seen, to be acknowledged. I may never know.
Moving from number 4 to number 3 means moving from hot to cold. Third on our list is the cold spot.
For as long as I've been a ranger at the national park, the eternal chill has been part of park lore. It's a spot deep within the woods where temperatures plunge inexplicably. It's like stepping into a walk-in freezer, regardless of the season. Your breath forms clouds in the air, and electronics fizzle out. But it's not just the cold that gets to you. It's the unsettling feeling that creeps up your spine the moment you step into it. My first encounter with the eternal chill was on a sweltering July day. I was leading a group of hikers when we stumbled upon it. One moment we were sweating under the summer sun, and the next, we were enveloped in bone-chilling cold. The sudden change silenced our group, unease etched on every face. Over the years, I'd seen many brave the eternal chill, curiosity luring them in. Most would retreat within minutes, unable to withstand the cold. But there were always a few who'd persist, who'd push the boundary, much like I did one fateful fall evening. As a ranger, I was intrigued by the unexplainable phenomenon and found myself drawn to it. I wanted to understand it, to find a logical explanation. I decided to camp out near the eternal chill, to observe it for an extended period. Setting up my tent, I could feel the cold seeping in, even though I was a good distance away from the zone. I had layers of clothing on, but the cold was a living entity, creeping through the fabric, making me shiver. As night fell, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. The moon was a sliver in the sky, casting long, eerie shadows. I was about to retreat into my tent when I noticed something odd. A faint blue light was emanating from the direction of the eternal chill. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. The forest was silent now, as if holding its breath. Against my better judgment, I decided to investigate the glow. As I moved closer to the source, the cold intensified, and my flashlight flickered and died. The blue light was brighter now, coming from a spot within the eternal chill. I could barely make out a figure, seemingly composed of the light itself, hovering just above the ground. Fear rooted me to the spot, the cold forgotten. Just then, the figure turned towards me, and I felt a wave of despair wash over me. It was a woman, her face twisted in a silent scream of anguish. She reached out towards me, her fingers mere wisps of light. In a panic, I stumbled backward and tripped over a root, hitting my head on a rock. The world spun and then everything went black. When I came to, the cold was gone. The first rays of dawn were filtering through the trees, and birds were chirping. There was no sign of the blue light or the spectral woman. My head throbbed where I'd hit it, a painful reminder of the previous night. I packed up my gear, my mind reeling. What had I seen? Was it a trick of the light? A dream? Or had I glimpsed at something otherworldly, a remnant of a tragedy long past? I reported my experience to the park authorities, who reacted with understandable skepticism. They chalked it up to hypothermia, a hallucination induced by the intense cold. But I knew what I had seen, what I had felt. It was real as the cold of the eternal chill. I was given some time off to recover. I tried to forget, to convince myself it had been a hallucination. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman's face, her silent scream, her reaching hand. Eventually I returned to work, but I steered clear of the eternal chill. I couldn't face it, couldn't bear the thought of what might be trapped there. But I couldn't shake off the memory either. The image of the woman haunted my dreams, her despair seeping into my waking hours. The eternal chill remains a mystery, a place of unbearable cold and profound unease. But for me, it's more than just an inexplicable phenomenon. It's a reminder of the woman in the blue light, her silent scream echoing in my mind, her despair forever etched in my memory. I imagine the eternal chill will continue replaying in a loop, waiting for the day its tale can be told.
Coming in at number 2, we bring you the Forgotten Watchtower.
I've been a park ranger for over a decade. It's usually quiet, peaceful. But there's this old watchtower at the edge of the park, a relic from some war no one remembers. The locals have a story about it, saying it's haunted by a soldier still standing guard. They say on some nights you can see a lantern's flickering light in the tower. Sounds like nonsense, right? But let me tell you, I've seen it myself. One night, a group of teenagers showed up, full of laughter and bravado. They'd heard the tales and decided to check it out, despite my warnings. I didn't want to play babysitter, but I knew the tower was old, unsafe. So I followed at a distance, ensuring they didn't do anything reckless. As we neared the tower, I noticed the temperature drop. The wind picked up, bringing with it an eerie chill that seeped into my bones. Looking up at the tower, I saw the lantern. The light was there, just like in the stories, faint and flickering in the desolate tower window. This all felt wrong. I approached the tower and called out to the kids. But instead of the expected taunts and laughter, all I heard was silence. I called again, louder, but there was no response. Panicked, I climbed the tower's rickety stairs, praying they wouldn't collapse beneath me. The inside of the tower was colder still, a penetrating chill that cut through my coat. I could see the kids' footprints in the dust on the floor. They had been here, but there was no sign of them now. The only thing I saw was that lantern. It sat on a windowsill, casting eerie shadows on the walls. As I drew closer, I could see there was no flame, no source of light, yet it glowed. Suddenly, the lantern flickered wildly, and a gust of wind slammed the tower door shut. My heart pounded in my chest as the room plunged into darkness. That's when I heard it. A low, rumbling voice, like the echo of 1,000 dead soldiers. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Anger, pain, sorrow. Then, everything went silent. The wind stopped. The voice faded away. I fumbled for my flashlight, trying to drive away the darkness. When the beam cut through the gloom, the first thing I saw was the lantern. It was extinguished, as lifeless as the forgotten soldier rumored to carry it. I raced down the tower stairs, calling for the teenagers. After what felt like an eternity, I heard a response. They were safe, huddled together a short distance away. They had heard the voice, seen the light extinguish. They were shaken, but unharmed. We left the tower and its ghostly guardian behind, returning to the safety of the park's boundaries. That experience changed me. I don't dismiss the local folklore anymore. The watchtower still stands, silent and haunted, a testament to the past. But no one ventures near it now. The story of the ghostly soldier is no longer a thrilling tale for teenagers seeking adventure, but a grim reminder of the park's spectral sentinel.
And now, coming in at number 1 as the most terrifying park ranger story of 1980, The Vanishing Trail Runner.
I've been a park ranger for most of my life. You'd be surprised by the number of people who get lost or injured on trails. But one incident stands out. The day the lead runner in a trail race simply disappeared. Her name was Abby. She was no amateur, having won several races before this one. When she vanished, she was leading almost a mile ahead of the next runner. She ran into the woods and just never came out. The park was alive with activity that day. Cheers from spectators, barks from dogs, the general thrill of competition. But when Abby didn't cross the finish line, the festive atmosphere died. We started a search, thinking maybe she had twisted an ankle and couldn't walk. I was one of the first to find the spot where Abby's tracks ended. There, in the middle of the trail, her footprints just ceased. No signs of a struggle, no indication that she had stepped off the path. Nothing. We called for dogs, helicopters, even had hundreds of volunteers combing the woods. We found nothing, no tracks, no clothes, nothing. It was as if she'd been plucked from the trail mid-stride. Night fell, and the search became more desperate. Her family, the race spectators, all waited for some news, but there was nothing to tell them. No one could explain how an experienced trail runner could disappear in broad daylight. The search continued for days, then weeks. Tips came in, sightings from all over the country. Each lead was a dead end. The mystery consumed the town and the local news. It was all anyone could talk about. The racecourse remained closed, a somber reminder of Abby's mysterious disappearance. The park went on with its existence, but it felt different, weighted with the unsolved mystery. Months turned into seasons. The hope of finding Abby began to fade. The incident was an echo in every rustling leaf, every patrol, a persistent ghost of a memory. One quiet evening, while on a routine patrol, I noticed something strange, a faint rhythmic thumping sound, like that of a runner's steady gait. My heart pounded in my chest, the noise growing louder in the silence of the forest. I followed the sound, a sense of dread knotting in my stomach. The thumping sound led me to a part of the trail long abandoned. There in the dust were fresh footprints. It was unmistakable. They were Abby's. Her distinct running shoe tread was one I had scrutinized over and over during the search. Overwhelmed, I immediately reported the discovery. Soon, the area was buzzing with park rangers and law enforcement. The unsolved mystery revived. The footprints were indeed Abby's, but where did they lead? Following the footprints, we came across a hidden path veiled by dense foliage. The path led to a small, concealed cabin in the woods. And there, to our disbelief, was Abby. She was alive, scared, disoriented, but alive. She was found in the company of an old hermit who had been living undetected in the park for years. He had a strange obsession with Abby and had been watching her previous races. He had laid a trap and taken her when she was leading the race that fateful day. The joy of finding Abby alive was immense, yet overshadowed by the chilling reality of her captor. The man was arrested, Abby was reunited with her family, and everyone in the park breathed a collective sigh of relief. I returned to my duties with a new perspective. I was no longer just a park ranger, but a guardian of the unsuspecting visitors, working to shield others from the unseen dangers lurking in the woods. The park resumed its life. The races continued, the trails echoing with the footsteps of runners. However, the memory of Abby's disappearance and unexpected rescue remained, and she never wanted to talk about it. As for me, I carry on, bearing the weight of my duty with renewed respect and caution. The laughter of runners is now a comforting sound, yet every so often I find myself glancing back at the hidden path, the echo of a runner's footfall causing me fright. The park was a place of beauty and tranquility, yes, but it had its dark corners too.
That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe. The top 5 most terrifying park ranger encounters from 1981 will be out soon. Thanks for watching Eerie Escapes.
That's all for now. Please leave us a comment and tell us what you think. Please also like and subscribe. Thank you.